Okay, we're 1 minute away. T minus 60, 59. Okay, I'm sorry. I haven't heard a T minus in so long. It was nice to see a space launch. Okay, Joe, let's fist bump. That means we're ready. Put your fist in front of the screen. Okay, we're ready.
Bring it.
John, let's start recording. What do you say?
Let's do it.
John, are we starting to record?
Absolutely.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Eskin. On behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it's my privilege to welcome you to a nonprofit empowerment webinar. And today we're looking at legacy giving. And I'm going to start with a question. And by the way, John's going to explain. Actually, John, take a second. John Largent is our producer and CEO of Game Day Media, and nothing could happen without him. He's become like a brother. Can you just share a little of the logistical information, particularly how they type in the chat space?
Sure. You can go down to the chat space and answer or ask any question. You can also go into the Q&A and do the same, and we will do our best to answer those questions at the end of the webinar. And anything that isn't answered, we'll send a copy to Jim, and he will do his best to answer those for you. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you, John. Okay, well, first of all, you know how to use the chat space. And so I'm going to start with a question. Can you tell me who is on the screen right now? Type the name in. Joe, you're barred from participating in this little quiz. Okay. Type in the name, and I'm going to give you some clues. We see any names, John?
Yes, we're seeing U.S. Grant, Ulysses S. Grant.
Because I think a big movie's coming out with him, with Leo starring in. Anybody else? I have to give you more clues. Let me tell you about our mystery guest. One day in 1988, he was doing something that the rest of us have done many times. He was enjoying the morning newspaper while he was eating his breakfast. In fact, I did that this morning. But he experienced something that the rest of us haven't. Guess what? He read his own obituary. He read his own obituary. Of course, that's a mistake, okay? And you could say it was the beginning of fake news. And our mystery man is actually Alfred Nobel, as in the Nobel Peace Prize. The paper had confused him for his brother Ludwig. And Alfred didn't like what he read in the paper. The obituary had the headline, get this, "The Merchant of Death Dead," and talked about the fortune he had made from the invention of dynamite. So Alfred Nobel wanted to be remembered for something else, and of course, indeed he was. He left his entire fortune when he actually did pass away in 1896, about $330 million in current dollars, to establish prizes to honor extraordinary contributions to humanity for peace, literature, and across the sciences. 1,000 Nobel laureates later, it's proved to be one of the most visionary and impactful gifts in the history of philanthropy. And talk about legacy gifts. When you hear the name Nobel, what a beautiful legacy comes to mind. And that's what we're going to talk about today, legacy giving. Each of your nonprofits has an opportunity to make your donors and friends, to give them a legacy. Maybe not quite at the level of Alfred Nobel, but you can reach into that territory. You can actually shape how they're remembered, okay? It's an exciting opportunity. Joe, we have a little tradition. We start out this show, this is kind of our mantra, and we ask everybody to type on the screen those words, nonprofit strong, because we are nonprofit strong. And I'm going to ask Joe, what are we?
We are nonprofit strong.
And you are right. And I'm going to give him a fuller introduction in a minute. But first, I'd like to welcome my friend and colleague, Joe April, who is from the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts in West Boylston, Massachusetts. And by the way, how is the April family doing?
We are doing well. Thank you for
asking. Are you all safe?
We are. Yep. All good.
Okay. And I might say that Joe is a proud member of Red Sox Nation, and he's bragging that his baseball team hasn't lost a single game yet. Not a single game. Is that right, Joe?
We are undefeated, Jim.
Pretty
Unbelievable.
Good.
Pretty crazy.
But I got to tell you, you know, I know how much my father and grandfather worshiped the Red Sox, and they worshiped Fenway Park. I mean, it was like going to a place of worship.
It is.
And I don't think they could comprehend a game without fans in the stands at Fenway. Fenway was part of the experience.
Yeah.
Enough about the Red Sox. Let's also talk about nonprofits. Joe, we like to say our audience is composed of CEOs and executive directors and board chairs and directors of development, other staff, other board members and volunteers. And they were essential before COVID. And we like to say now they're more essential than ever. And they are nonprofit strong. A little footnote and background about myself. After a career in higher education advancement that was very satisfying. And like Joe, we both spent a good chunk of our careers advancing community colleges. In June of 2018, my wife and Andrea launched Eskin Fundraising Training. We noticed we had the privilege of working with so many fearless community and business leaders. And Joe, they were fearless of everything they had to face in their lives, with one exception: asking for a gift. And what do we know about fear? Most of fear is fear of the unknown. So we launched Eskin Fundraising Training to help people overcome the fear of asking for gifts and replacing that fear with comfort and confidence. We have a monthly newsletter called Stratagems, and just had a cat come across the desk here.
There she is.
Cute, and I lost all my notes. Yeah. She's a diva. She always wants to get into the screen. But we have a monthly e-newsletter. And by the way, we'd love to get all of you in our database. And that way, not only do you receive the free monthly newsletter, but you also get invited. And by the way, John, that issue has come up. Let's see if we have solved it.
Just click on the slide.
Just a little. Yeah, I know. For some reason, I'm going to call my wife over here. I can't. Okay. I'm here. No, she isn't here. Last year, we were proud to publish our first book, and it's a short book. It's 80 pages. And again, it's demystifying the art and science of fundraising. This is our final installment of the spring series, and we're trying to get different authorities on different challenges and opportunities facing the nonprofit sector. We're excited. We have a summer series that's setting up right now. And again, we consider everyone part of the learning community. We think, Joe and I think that we have a lot of answers, but guess what? We don't have all the answers, but we know we have a lot of experienced and wise people in our live and now virtual audience. And we think between us, the answers are always in the room or the virtual room. Joe and I have a very good colleague named Marv Leroy, who founded in 2015 the Institute for Philanthropic Excellence. And when I hear a good line, I like to borrow it. And Marv's mantra is more money equals more mission. And that reminds us that, you know, money is not the end. It is just the means to the end. And what we're in the business of helping people give time and money to make the world better for others. And if we ever needed that, we needed that now. We try to demystify the art and science of fundraising. We like to say that you can break fundraising into four distinct parts: identifying who you're going to ask, cultivating a personal and emotional bond between the donor prospect and your mission. Finally, the who, what, when, how much of the ask. And finally, you close the loop with stewardship, in which we acknowledge and thank the donor so we can come back to him next year, Joe, and ask him to consider a give again and consider to give even more. Now, we like to poll the audience. Tell us, of those four categories, which topics would you like to see addressed in future webinars? A for discovery, B for cultivation, C for solicitation, and D for stewardship. Type that in. John, are we getting answers?
Yes, we'll keep this up for about 5 more seconds and then I'll share the results.
Okay. Well, hey, Joe, we're going to be kept in suspense.
I love it. I bet it's D. Oh, I tied.
I tell you what, yeah, it's funny. There was D last week. Yeah, it's a sophisticated crowd because they want to know about stewardship. And here's another poll question. Are fundraisers born or made? Type in A if you think they're born. Type in B if you think they're made. We got some answers, John?
Wow.
They're right, because guys like Joe, April, myself, Marv Leroy, and a lot of the other folks, we're going to help make you great fundraisers. And we like to say that anybody with the Jeffersonian virtues of a knowing head and an honest heart can be a great fundraiser. I want to introduce now more fully our special guest today, and we're going to get to a Q&A. I got to tell you, for one reason, planned giving has been viewed as kind of a technical and more complicated piece of the development puzzle, but it really doesn't have to be that way. A planned gift is simply a contribution that is arranged in the present and allocated at a future date. And they enable philanthropic individuals to make gifts many times greater to the causes they believe in than they could from ordinary income. So we're thrilled to have as our subject matter expert, Joe April, from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, West Boylston. That's a town, not a street. And he is the resident expert on planned giving with the Institute for Philanthropic Excellence. This is a national consulting firm that helps nonprofits of all sizes and scopes more fully and richly live out their mission. Joe has more than 30 years of experience in the nonprofit resource development programs as both a staff member and consultant. His professional expertise includes major gifts, planned giving, strategic planning for foundation boards and advancement teams. And like me, he spent a good chunk of his career developing resources for community college. And we're so lucky that Joe is going to share practical and easy to understand steps that nonprofits can take to market, discover best prospects, tactically explore, and close on gifts from estates and assets, all done virtually, by the way. So, Joe, what do you say we get going with the questions?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Let's start with a biggie. The greatest wealth transfer in history is projected in which aging baby boomers, see our here,
Or
will
no hair.
allocate more than, get this, 68 trillion with a T, $68 trillion through their estate plans over the coming 30 years. So our question is, Joe, how can nonprofits position themselves to access this enormous window of opportunity?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jim. And it's an honor to be on your show, by the way. Please don't mention hair, though. I don't have any. That's not good. Not good. But so, I think you mentioned it in your opening, some of the things that prohibit people or organizations from pursuing planned gifts. And that's fear, doubt, and insecurity. The first time I learned about planned gifts was, oh my gosh, I went to a case conference when I was a young fundraiser, and the person who was talking about cruts and crats and nimcruts and charitable.
Oh my God. I think I was at that conference.
Well, and talking about how to secure a $25 billion charitable remainder unit trust with the flip. And I zoned out. I'm like, in my life, I'm never. So I think, number one, with all of this money coming, it's going to go somewhere, right? It's happening. It's happening whether we do anything or not in our nonprofits. So from my perspective, I think the way that nonprofits can position themselves is, number one, remove the fear, doubt, and insecurity. Understand that the vast majority, and we'll talk about it today, of planned gifts are simple bequests or life insurance or IRAs. You don't need to be an estate planning attorney, and you don't need to be an expert. What you need to be is a person who's passionately supportive of your mission. So number one, work on your own fear, doubt, and insecurity. And then number two, interestingly, just like fundraising, the number one reason donors don't give planned gifts to even their nonprofits of choice is because nobody ever asks them. Or in planned giving, a lot of times donors don't think that smaller nonprofits have the ability to accept planned gifts. So I think it's educate yourself, remove the fear, doubt, and insecurity, and get yourself ready to advise your donors that you do indeed accept and welcome planned gifts. Because they're going to go somewhere. They might as well go to places that we all know and love so that they can make an impact on our organizations.
Joe, you got us off to a good start. Most people associate estate or planned gifts with only the very wealthy or usually older people. So can donors of more modest means and various ages and backgrounds consider making gifts from estates and assets?
Yeah, absolutely. And the national trends are going down. So planned gifts are now starting to be generated with donors of more modest means and frankly, younger. Not as young as you, Jim, but, certainly young.
I like you, Joe.
But really, when you think about it, when do people look at their estate plans? It's when they get married, when they buy a house, when they have a life change, when there's a national emergency like COVID-19. As a matter of fact, questions to online websites about planned gifts and wills and estates have gone up 600% since March because of what's happening externally. So you don't need to be 80 years old to be buying a house, or so people are looking at their estate plan. So it's all about making it part of your everyday fundraising sort of arrow in your quiver. So you don't need to be elderly or rich to make a planned gift. Getting in front of people, making sure they know you accept planned gifts, particularly at those times when they're having a life change and they're naturally looking at their estates or their wills, that's the time to do it. And here's a great quiz for you, Jim. I know you love quizzes.
Yeah.
Once somebody writes a will and it's written, and no matter your age, I don't care if you're 20 or 70, once you write a will, as long as something drastically doesn't change with that nonprofit that's in the will, how many people change their wills? How many people go in and call their lawyer and say, I want to change my will? Once it's written, what percentage change it?
I would say about 2%.
Close. It's about 7%. So if you do stewardship, as many of you said you like, you can get people to put your organization in their will regardless of their age. And if you do your job in stewardship, the chances are pretty good that they're not going to change it. And you have what we all want to have, which is a donor for life. So yeah, I'm a big fan of marketing planned giving everywhere, regardless of age or income.
Joe, most legacy gifts fall into one of three categories, three big buckets. First one, charitable bequests. The second one, retirement plans. The third one, life insurance policies. That's where the vast majority fall into those three buckets.
Yep.
Can you just take a minute or two to describe each of those options?
Yeah, and what's common of all three is they're easy to do and they're flexible. So, you know, the charitable remainder, unit trust, flip, NIM, whatever all that means, those are not easy to do, and they're very often inflexible. So the reality is, particularly for smaller nonprofits, and Jim, you and I have a lot of experience in community colleges, almost 95% of all planned gifts are one of those three vehicles. So particularly bequests. Bequests are very easy. All you need to do is just tell your lawyer, or even if you don't have a lawyer, ask your accountant or whoever does your will to insert language in your will that says, I, Joe April, leave to ABC Community College X amount of dollars or Y percentage of my residual estate. Very easy to do. And bequests are wonderful because they're easy to do. They're flexible. So if you live to be 130 years old like Jim, right?
I thought I was young.
It's still young nowadays.
Oh, I'm young now. Okay.
If you live, one of the questions a lot of people ask is, what if I outlive my assets and I put XYZ organization in your will? Guess what? They don't get it. There's no will police that are going to show up and say, you promise you do this, therefore you have it. So wills are easy, wills are flexible, and wills have flexibility in your planning. You can say, as I did in my will, I leave all of, X amount to my wife and my children, and then residually, whatever's left after these situations occur, I give Y percentage of the residual to the following nonprofits. They're easy, they're flexible, and they're revocable. They're not written in stone. They can change, and they should change.
Wow.
Very easy to do.
Joe, can you take a moment to describe some of the tax benefits of making gifts from estates?
Yeah, I think that the tax benefits are knowing what the right vehicles are, so that as you leave assets to your family, those are the ones that aren't going to likely be hit with large estate taxes. So, for example, retirement assets are very easy to leave to a nonprofit, but if you leave them to your heirs, they tend to be taxed rather high. So if you're looking at what you want to do in terms of leaving money to both, then certainly look at these vehicles that are going to go to charity because they have a better tax. I'm not a tax attorney. I don't play one on TV, but certainly IRAs, estate, they all provide good vehicles by which you can leave the most amount of money to your heirs without passing on estate taxes to them. And that's important.
Okay, Joe, I know this is a very important issue to you, so let's get some emphasis on this.
Love it.
How can a nonprofit discover donors who've already included in the nonprofit in their estate plans?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic, and it's something that when we all get done today, I'm going to say everybody on this call can go and do tomorrow. So what can you do? Because this is a question in everyone's mind. I'm a staff of one or two. I've got a board. I got people worried about annual giving, major giving. How do I find donors and get them to talk about estate plans? I would say number one, make it integrated into all of your asks. Don't separate it out as a program. Just use it as part of all of your solicitations. So that old adage of a frequent delivery of a consistent message, have legacy, let people know you accept legacy gifts throughout every single thing that you do. If you haven't started one, start a legacy society. Very simple to do. It's just anyone that puts the organization in their estate plans becomes a member of the legacy society. What that then gives you the opportunity to do is create some exclusivity. And then you can do something really cool. And Jim, you and I talked about this. And I'll bet you everybody on this call could do this tomorrow and find 2 new legacy donors. There is somebody sitting in your catchment area right now, I don't care where you are, that has already put the organization in their will. They just didn't tell you. They went to their attorney. The attorney said, okay, well, let's do this, let's do that. By the way, Jim, do you have an organization you love that you'd like to include? And people will say, yeah, I want my college, or I want the local humane society. Those people have already put you in their wills. All you got to do is cast a broad net. So do something like send through your media, send through your newsletters that you're launching or relaunching a legacy society, and you would like anyone who's put the organization in their will to let you know. That way they're then going to self-disclose that they've done that, and you'll find people out there, and that'll give you a critical mass to start with. Very low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I love low-hanging fruit.
Me
Hey,
too.
Joe, a lot of our attendees come from organizations that are smaller or mid-size in scope, and
Yep.
they don't have staff that has, quote, plan giving expertise. So how much do they need to know to bring up plan giving options with their donors and friends?
Yeah, you know, that's an often asked question, and I think the one thing you don't need to be is knowing what a flip nim crud is. What you need to be is a great ambassador for your organization, and know that offering donors the opportunity to make a planned gift can often allow them to make a gift larger than they ever possibly thought, or make an impact larger than they possibly thought. So the most important thing that I think is that I would walk away with today for people in smaller organizations is just feel comfortable, number one, knowing that there's a way by which you can use planned giving to help donors achieve their goals. And number two, you don't need to know the specifics. That's why God created attorneys and all the other kinds of folks that they can talk to. Very important, I find, that the discussions need to be about mission and not taxes. Find a donor that wants to make an impact, and the planned giving that you know about, we'll be able to put something together. You don't need to know the intricate details. Think of it as another arrow in your fundraising quiver, honestly.
Well, I think this one ties into that. You work on a lot of capital campaigns.
Yep.
And the goal of a capital campaign is to stretch the giving capacity of the donors.
Yep.
Can you tell us how estate gifts can be used to stretch the giving capacity of a donor during a capital campaign?
Yeah, and I'm going to take 1 minute and tell you a story about a woman named Maxine Elmont at Mass Bay Community College, who is she's passed away. She was a faculty member for 49 years at Mass Bay. Okay, so she was a little old lady, 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
She was the one who carried the mace at every graduation. So we were in the midst of a capital campaign. She came up to me and she said, "You know what, Joe? I'm not happy right now, because if my wallet matched my heart, none of the students that I work with would ever have to worry about anything, because I wouldn't take care of them. But all I can do is give you $10,000 a year for 5 years," which is a very nice gift. So what we then talked about was, well, if you put us in your will, you're contributing to something today, and knowing that when you pass, it's going to remain in perpetuity. So I think with capital campaigns is just knowing, number one, you clearly want to lead with cash first. You can't build a building from future gifts, but boy, you can short store donors and give them the opportunity to make a larger gift when you do what we did with Maxine, which is combine an annual gift of X amount every year with the knowledge that it's going to be backed with a bequest that's going to be much larger, that's going to ensure the work she supported in her life remains in perpetuity. And that was just such a wonderful experience as a fundraiser to be able to see her eyes light up. So include it. You may not want to lead with it because you don't want to give people out when you're maybe looking at someone that can give you $1 million cash, but look at it as, again, part of an integrated fundraising ask, like Maxine. God love her.
I like that.
Yeah, she's a great lady.
Again, with smaller and mid-sized organizations with limited staff and budgets in mind, what are your recommendations on the marketing of planned gifts to their donors and friends?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is don't market them separately. Market it as the proverbial three-legged stool that we all want to have. Annual giving, which takes care of daily, unrestricted, budget-relieving kind of gifts. Major gifts, which are the kind of gifts that would be restricted or used in a campaign. And planned gifts, which ensures that what the gifts that a person does in their lifetime remains in perpetuity. I think one of the important things to do to ensure that you're being able to market these is give the ability to restrict planned gifts. And that's controversial, quite honestly. But I'll tell you, if you're able to go to somebody like at a college and say, if you establish an endowment through major gifts in your lifetime, and you add to that endowment by a bequest when you pass away, the endowment will get larger and the impact of it will increase. So it's very important to be upfront and talk about the needs of all three, annual, planned, and major, and approach each donor asking them to consider all three and the impact of all three will make on the organization. Very important.
Joe, what are effective ways for nonprofits to work with professionals such as attorneys, CPAs, and financial advisors who share close relationships with major gift donors and friends?
Yeah, don't make the mistake that I did the first time I did an estate planning seminar for my donors, is I invited somebody who was simply looking to troll for new clients. So I basically gave him a room full of people that he bugged for about 6 months. So number one, when you do look at having experts kind of join your organization, which I think is a good idea, just make sure they're carefully vetted and that they're mission first. But there's plenty of ways that I think you can use these types of experts. Number one, it's always a good idea, I find, to create a plan giving advisory group, which is just a group of people that you can pick up the phone when you're getting into some complicated discussions around planned gifts and just say, hey, I'm working with a person who wants to do X, Y, Z. How would you advise me to him or her that they can do it with planned gifts? So having kind of a lifeline of an estate planning group of volunteers that you can work with is important. Second, ask them to do regular guest articles in your magazine so that they're talking about topical kind of things. What doesn't work are the A to Z's of planned giving. What does work are things like planned giving in a down economy, or how to take advantage of new changed laws, things like that. So your experts can really help you provide a service to your donors. And also they may refer. It doesn't happen that often, I don't think, but they sometimes will offer their knowledge of nonprofits to potential, individuals of wealth that come to their office. But I would look at an advisory board and I would tap into their expertise as a marketing tool for sure.
Joe, you ready for a big question?
I love big questions.
Okay, let's go.
Bring it.
Estate gifts are known for being the most personal and intimate of conversations between a nonprofit and their donor. So in the COVID-19 environment of social distancing and virtual reality, how can these intimate conversations be handled virtually?
There's no playbook for this, as we all know, and there's probably ideas from participants that are as good as the ones that I'm going to share. So it's an evolving discussion, but I can share what I've seen been working over the past couple months. Number one, acknowledge this, that just going and talk to somebody and doing the proverbial rock and talk isn't going to apply right now. Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's doing Zoom. Everybody, I don't care if you're 90 or 9, has to work in this new. So acknowledge that. Reach out to your donors, reach out to your prospects, and use Zoom. I think that's probably, or a phone call. They're all going to work in the same way. Most importantly, act now. For the first time in a long time, you've got an intersection of people that are worried about their mortality and they're worried about their finances, and that's driving people to uncomfortable discussions regardless of their age. So get ahead of it. Find a list of your top 25 likely planned giving prospects and talk to them on the phone, get them on a Zoom call, and most importantly, talk about mission. Explain to them how important funds are now, and that planned giving now will be able to help ensure that emergencies of the future are going to be able to be addressed. Don't ignore them. Acknowledge the realities of technology, and make sure you're talking about the mission. And don't be afraid to make an ask via this medium. Everybody else is trying to find their way through it. Just do it. If there are people that are knowledgeable about your organization, believe in your mission, they're going to be expecting something, and you might as well do that.
Whether it's in person or virtual, you have to call them, you have to listen, and you have to ask. So let's move on. Gifts of stock often come up in the planned giving arena. Why are they smart strategies for donors?
Yeah, those are great. That's a great question, and something that often is overlooked, but donors know this importance of this. Of all the planned gifts, stocks are the ones that are most tax related. because if you bought stock a long
Yeah.
time ago for, I'll just say the $5 a share, and now it's $20 a share. Well, if you're going to sell those stocks, you're going to pay some huge capital gains taxes. But if you gift them, you don't pay the capital gains tax. So having the ability to have a donor transfer stock to your nonprofit, they can often make a larger gift than they thought they could from not immediate assets. And secondarily, they're maximizing their value on it because they don't have to pay the capital gains tax on those stocks. So market, by all means, stocks, particularly in a major gift or any kind of campaign. Very important and very tax savvy for people that will do that.
Okay, Joe, you ready for another big question?
I love it. Bring it.
What's the best way? What's the best way for nonprofits to identify good prospects for planned gifts from their annual donor databases?
Great question. I used to think the proverbial story of the little old lady on Cape Cod that sent $10 every year, and everybody said, "Nah, she's only giving us $10." Was a myth. But I can tell you from experience that myth came to reality. There was a college I worked at where there was an annual giving donor that gave, I think it was like 23 out of the past 30 years, but never over $100. So we went to visit with her, and it was exactly that metric. So number one, look at your database, look at who's consistent donors over a period of time, and go talk to them or Zoom call with them. Also, your large donors, again, if you're in a small nonprofit, many times they may not know how important planned gifts can be to your organization. Don't ignore those big donors because they're going to likely be looking right now at organizations that can benefit from planned gifts. If they love you, they should be looking at your planned giving opportunities as well. And then the last thing that I would say, and it takes a little bit of work, but it pays off, get to know your prospects, know when their birthdays are, know when they get married, know when they buy a house, because as we said earlier, it's during those life changes that people look at their estate plans and are more likely to include some kind of a charitable intention in them. So don't overlook your number one donors, look at your frequent long-term donors, and absolutely look at people that are making life changes right now because they're likely to be looking at their estate plans. And last one, very important, Jim, look at retirees. If you're in a college, look at retirees, look at people that are not there anymore because they've worked at a place for a long time, love what they do. And often they need to, their finances aren't such they can write a gift for $100,000, but they can sure put the organization in their will for a certain amount. So don't overlook that.
Hey, John, I want to ask Joe one final question, but do we have some questions in the chat room?
Yes.
Great question right there.
Okay. So, Joe, here's your last question before we go to the chat space, okay? And this is kind of to tie it up in a nice little neat ball.
Yep.
What is your advice for our attendees to do tomorrow when they wake up and put into action what they learned over the last hour?
Yeah. Number one, convince the leadership of your institution that seeking planned gifts is important. Oftentimes, leadership doesn't understand fundraising and will always migrate more to we need cash. Educate them that it's not one or the other. They're often together. So number one, educate leadership that it's an important thing to pursue. Focus on the easy things, bequests, IRAs, life insurance. Don't worry about CRUTs, CRATs, NIMCRUTs. Bequests are easy to do. Integrate everything into your ongoing plans. So by all means, add at the bottom of your emails, we accept planned gifts, call me for more information. And then most importantly, and Jim, you and I love this one, cast that broad net. Put it out there that you're now launching, relaunching, starting planned giving, and say to anyone within your catchment area, if you have put us in your estate plans, please tell us because we want to honor you for that commitment that you've made to us. You will find, I guarantee, 2 or 3 individuals that have already done it, and that's the lowest of lowest hanging fruit. And then create a simple brochure. You're going to need something to hand people. You don't need a $30 billion brochure. No. You just need something that says who you are, why you do it, and talk about life insurance, bequests, and IRAs. So keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Hey, we're right on schedule, Joe.
Wow.
John, do you have some questions queued up from the audience?
Yeah. So the first one is
Let me, by the way, explain. If the question's easy, Joe, I take it. If the
Excellent.
question is more challenging, it goes to the man from West Boylston, Massachusetts.
Oh, I guess. All right.
First question: should mission statements be short and simple?
I don't know which. Joe, do you want to go? I want to add. That's irresistible. Go ahead.
I vote for short and simple, to be honest. Keep it simple.
Yeah. I think too, first of all, it should be that really reflects the essence of your nonprofit, and in a very competitive world sets it apart. Remember, donors aren't choosing from the good and the bad, they're choosing from the good and the good, and they have to understand what you are about. And I would echo what Joe said. What you're about is best said when, you know, everyone, every staff member, every board member can say it simply and with sincerity. So short and sweet is always the best. Next question.
How do you put these gifts in your yearly budget when you have no idea if or when it might happen in one fiscal year?
That's a tough one. I'm going to assign that to Joe.
That is exactly why I love legacy societies, because what you can put for metrics is how many members in a legacy society you will get in the course of 1 year. What you can't say is, I secured 10 planned gifts last year, and I think 8 of those people are going to pass away, which will mean we have Y amount of dollars. I'm sure there's a smart actuarial someplace that can figure that out. But you do need to do metrics, and I often find that the metrics of legacy society membership is a great way to show that your program is moving forward. And frankly, the numbers will follow, because once you have a lot of people in your legacy society, that always will then turn into more dollars down the road.
You know, Joe, for every nonprofit I work for, we told the donors, as soon as you included us in your estate plan, you are guaranteed to live another 25 years.
Or everybody's experienced this, the knock on the door from someone during a campaign that says Mary Jones died and left you $1 million. And everybody says, who the heck is Mary Jones, right?
Yeah.
Somebody 20 years earlier was smart enough to talk to her. So starting it now and measuring it by legacy society memberships is a great way to show progress.
John, do we have some more questions?
Yes. Is it worth investing in a wealth screen of an organization's database to determine best prospects for deferred giving outreach? And the second part of that question is, what is the youngest age we should be thinking about PG asks?
Two good questions. One's a little sensitive.
Well, I think the youngest age is a tough question. I think you have to look at the people that are based in your high likelihood areas. So your board, people who make planned gifts don't change them. So I'm hesitant to give an age. And the first part is wealth screening. I got to be honest, I've never had a lot of success using wealth screening as a predictor of planned gifts. What's a good predictor of planned gifts
and
is getting to know
Joe,
people.
Yeah, Joe, I wanted to echo, sure, wealth screening can't hurt you, but I wonder, particularly in this economy, how many nonprofits can afford it. Right. And it's amazing how much you can do simply like bringing your board together and they can have a sense. I often think zip codes are a poor man's wealth screening. Between zip code analysis and using your board will know somebody who knows somebody. Sure, it's great to spend big money on wealth screening, but just because you don't have it doesn't mean you can't have an effective program.
Yeah, and they're expensive. And honestly, planned giving is not a transactional gift. Annual giving is a transactional gift. Planned giving is not. You're not going to have so you got to get to know these people. So I think you're right, Jim. I think it's expensive. I think it's a part of the equation, but it's not the only part of the equation.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I got some friends who work for those companies,
I know, right?
But
is anybody from Blackbot on?
It's a time of making difficult choices. Difficult choices with limited resources. John, some more questions?
What has worked in honoring people that are in the Legacy Society?
Great question.
I like that.
I'll tell you what doesn't work anymore: tchotchkes and giving people little trinkets. Nobody cares about that.
Hey, put your fist out. I mean, because they're saying they have no place to put that stuff.
I know, right? But you know what does work is honoring planned giving donors the same way you'd honor any donor, by getting them close to your mission. If you're in a college, have a legacy event, but have students there to talk about their lives. If somebody makes a planned gift and directs it to, say, the nursing program, invite that donor while he or she is alive to things like the nursing pinning ceremony, or invite them to meet a nurse. Because you know what that's going to do? Number one, it's going to make sure that they're going to feel honored by their gift. And the next time an annual giving envelope plops on their desk, they're likely going to support it. Here's the biggest mistake I find people make in planned giving is they get a planned gift, they take the person to lunch, they have steak, and everybody thinks it's great. And then they forget about them and nobody talks to them. Treat them like any other. Don't worry about the tchotchkes. Don't worry about plaques. It's nice. It's not essential. Get them closer to your mission and show them the impact that gift is going to make. Even if the impact is going to happen in 40 years, show them what is going to happen. That's what I would do. Great
answer. Great answer. Do we have time for one or two final questions?
Yeah, this is a kind of a follow-up or an extension of that previous question. When a smaller organization starts a legacy society, do you recommend levels of giving within that, or treat larger versus smaller legacy donors differently?
Personally, I would, if you put the organization in your estate plans, I would say you are a member of that organization's legacy society, period. But all donors are not created equal, I guess. I hate to say that. So if you know that there's somebody who's in your legacy society that's a multi-billionaire, and there's somebody in your legacy society like me that has $8 in their checking account, are you going to store them differently? Probably. But as membership in a legacy society, I think it's all or nothing. I think you're in. And I think that's important. I really do.
And we're saying legacy societies can be inclusive. John, do we have time for a final question?
Yes. Can or do you work with the members of your legacy society to identify other potential donors?
Great.
Okay, question. Hit that one out of the park. Fenway Park, hopefully.
Yeah, over the left. We'll do the Carlton fist. That one. It's gonna go that way. Yes, there is nothing better, in my opinion, to honor a donor than to ask for referrals. And that's not just the planned gifts. And that, if somebody loves your organization enough to put them side by side with their children and their, whomever, that's a deep love. And you want them to share that love with others just like them. Absolutely great question. I think that's probably one of the things most important and often overlooked. So yes. Jim, you must have comments on that, right? I mean, that's a big.
No, I said, and I want to thank our learning communities come up with some really telling questions. I want to try, this is a little daunting, but to sum up what Brother Joe has shared. First of all, opportunity is knocking. We're nonprofit strong, but everybody, I want you to type in, opportunity is knocking for two reasons. We're being reminded of our own mortality because, Joe, I was seeing that these online estate planning programs, they are up 100, 200%. People are creating estates like crazy. And number two, people are giving. Philanthropy is holding up, and the planned gift is just what you call another quiver, that you can use to increase the giving capacity. And again, COVID is a wake-up call. I'll tell you what, there's none of us who probably doesn't have a loved one now that's not been touched. And this is a great time for all nonprofits, small, medium, and large, to talk about their various planned giving programs. Again, even before COVID-19, I can't even fathom this number, but the baby boomer generation that Joe and I and John are members of is projected to transfer, I can't even, $68 trillion over the coming 30 years. Joe, I was wondering if you were to take dollar bills and stack them up one on top of the other, I think that'd take you to the planet Jupiter. There is a lot of money, and it can go to the government, it can go to families, or it can go to charity. And how are we going to get it to go to nonprofits? We have to build relationships, and we have to ask. Uh, Joe made a big point. People don't get excited about making a planned gift or a bequest or an IRA or a life insurance policy. It's what their project. Are they interested in scholarships? Are they interested in a special program? Are they interested in a capital campaign projects? But as Joe said, I'm going to borrow it again. I hope I don't have to pay dues on it. It's another quiver. And so the projects that donors are inspired about, they can put money more down on the table for the present and future terms. So really, it greatly expands the impact. And the rule of thumb is that, you know, like most wives will hear from their husbands, you're worth a lot more to me dead than alive. Well, people can give gifts several times larger from their estates and assets than they can from their income. And we talked about, you really can boil it down. Joe, I think I was in the same room. I went to my first estate planning course, and the first 2 hours were about crusts and everything, and ruts, and, you know. But then really, it's, you know, that charitable bequests, which is a fancy way to say, remember us in your will. They alone account for 90% of planned gifts. And the other big two are retirement plans and life insurance policies. And these are three concepts that are very easy for our donors and friends to grasp. And so you want to talk about, will you consider remembering us in your will? And typically you're using a specific amount or percentage. You can do very well in both cases. Retirement plans, a lot of people have built up very impressive IRAs, KIOs, 401ks, 401bs, and there are a lot of tax savvy strategies to help them spend that money out. Maybe they don't need all of it. And finally, they can designate your nonprofit in their life insurance policy. Just about everyone can do that. Joe, one more time. What is the low-hanging fruit?
Cast the broad net and ask people if they've already put you in their policies, because they likely have. You'll get, everybody will walk away with 2 new donors they didn't think about.
There's the man from West Boylston's guaranteeing you 2. I'm going to guarantee you 3. They are already your planned giving donors, but you don't know it yet. And so you have to ring the bell. You have to introduce the society that they are going to belong to. And what you want to do, Joe, is highlight their stories.
Yeah.
You know, that you want to show, sure, wealthy people can do estate plan gifts, but people from all different economic means and backgrounds can. As Joe talked about, there are tax benefits, not just for the donor, but for the heirs. There are a lot of exciting tax benefits. We talked about network with lawyers and CPAs and financial advisors. Maybe you have them on your boards and advisory council or your alumni councils. They can help you with the more complex language. And by the way, too, probably no donor is going to do anything until they speak to their lawyer or financial advisor or their CPA. And Joe said it's real important to recognize and salute those donors, because that's one of the ways we can flush them out. You already have them. You just got to flush them out and tell them. I mean, come up with a name. It's sometimes like Heritage Society. Sometimes it's very fitting to the institution, the year of founding, or something like that. Highlight them, make them your heroes. But what you don't want to do is give legal advice. And usually we always say in the fundraising business before, and I'll tell you what, 99.9% of the donors I know, they don't budge without talking to their lawyers, their CPA, and their financial advisors. But we do not want to be in the business of giving legal advice. That's not our specialty. Our specialty is to inspire the donors about our projects and about our missions, and to listen to them and to ask, okay? This is a very privileged conversation. You know, when it comes down to it, people make multiple annual gifts. You know, that can be anywhere from $25 to $1,000 or more bucks. But usually there are not that many nonprofits they include in their estate plans. And usually I've discovered, Joe, people want to reflect what was important in their lives in their estates. And that is the people, the organizations, and the priorities. So if they were having close conversations with you about their annual gifts, that means you're in a good position to have this very intimate conversation with them about a planned gift. And as Joe pointed out, we're all learning and doing something new, but these privileged conversations can and should be through technology and virtual media, because that's the only way we can do it. It's a good thing to have your board and management lead by example, because they're not going to have a credibility asking for gifts unless they give an annual gift or a campaign gift, or they're not going to have credibility asking for a planned gift unless they themselves are leading by example and including their favorite nonprofit in their estate plan. We did mention too, when you study some of the largest endowments on the planet, Joe, back in your backyard, that little institution, Harvard, comes to mind.
Oh, I've heard
that,
of them.
I think started fundraising in 1643, and they got a head start on us, folks. Guess what? They have an endowment. I think it's close to $40 billion. You know, it's fluctuated with the stock market. But guess what, folks? When you study who has the largest endowments of the world, most of that has come from gifts from estates and assets and planned gifts. And by the way, it's not one or the other, Joe. I appreciate you making the point that usually your best planned gift donors are those who have been consistently supporting you on an annual basis. And kind of like in baseball and fundraising, we study all the statistics. And guess what? We find out when a donor makes a planned gift, the size of their annual gift actually increases. So you're not robbing, Peter to pay Paul. Even though wills have gone up, there is a tremendous educational challenge facing that. Even after this exponential growth in people creating estate plans in the last month or two, only 1/3 of the population has wills. So we have a great education challenge, and that's why a lot of nonprofits bring in friends who are experts in estate planning and hold instructional seminars. Not how to include your specific nonprofit, but how they should think about creating a estate plan, knowing that probably a good number are going to come back to them. And we can do that, by the way, virtually. And then we're saying again, it's not just the wealthiest and the oldest among us. Everybody can be a legacy donor. Everybody can include us in their will. Everybody can include us in their pension plan. Everyone can include us in their life insurance policy. So again, don't get pigeonholed and think this is just for the very wealthy among us. Because the bottom line, we're in the business of asking donors to support our missions because they can feel better about themselves. Joe and I have been in this business, and we can tell you that we think the donor gets just as much, or if not more, satisfaction from making a gift than the recipient and beneficiary. It's about another way that they can feel great. And I got to tell you right now, feeling great in this time in this world feels even greater. And that's what each of you and your nonprofits, you can make your donors feel great, whether it's through a current, annual, capital campaign, or planned gift. Finally, Joe, we like to say that nonprofits have a superpower, and that is their passion for their mission. And we like the 3 P's here: the purpose powers perseverance. And I do repeat myself a little, but I have a favorite quote from the late Maya Angelou. And Joe, she said that people will not remember what you said. They won't remember even what you did. They will never forget how you made them feel. Our job, quite simply, is to make that donor for a planned gift or a current gift feel like the most important person in the world. And I lead by giving people a money back guarantee. Here's my money back guarantee. Your chances of getting the gift go way up when you ask. Would you agree, Joe?
I would say that's a very good assumption. Yes.
Okay, and I also repeat this, but yeah, here's someone also from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. John F. Kennedy, this gives me goosebumps. Said this at the commencement address at American University on June 10th, 1963, that the most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet, we all breathe the same air, we all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. I get goosebumps because I think President Kennedy was speaking to us right now in May of 2020. So I want to thank our producer, John Largent, CEO of Gain Day Media. And our plans are we are immediately going to have a very short narrative summary posted on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And then our miracle man, John Largent, is going to edit the tape and the recording. And we are going to send that, to all our registrants. And we're also going to post that on Facebook and LinkedIn. And I want to thank my friend and colleague, Joe April, from the Institute for Philanthropic Excellence. Thank you for a way you took, again, a very complex and sometimes feared component of the development equation, and you made it so easy to understand. So continued safety and good health, and may the Red Sox continue not losing any games this year.
They're undefeated so far. Jim, thank you for inviting me today. You're a wonderful ambassador for nonprofits. I love your passion.
Thank you. And to all our attendees, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next Wednesday. We're going to have Fred Steuben from another Bay State company. He's here in South Texas, but he's with Mass Mutual, and he's a financial services professional out of their South Texas office, and he's going to be giving financial advice on how to weather the storm. So we'll see you all next Wednesday. And thank you, and stay safe. And to all our nonprofit friends, thank you for the wonderfully and profoundly important work you do at such a time of need to make this world better. Good night.